right, so I'd like to welcome everybody to our first master class. We tend to do a lot more of these, and it's really special that our first one is with Jesse Starks. We've talked to Jesse for quite a while about how to promote him and his career, and I think this is a really good start for it. We applaud his successes in recent years. I mean, 2 times making the Vegas shoot-off in 2 consecutive years is quite extraordinary. And we're really proud to have him associated with this shop in any way. So to be able to host this as our first one is awesome. I think that Jesse reflects exactly how we coach here, which is, form first, equipment second, and he'll tell you about that. But I just know that everybody in here who works on bows always jokes that Jesse's equipment is never tuned the way they would have their own equipment tuned. But yet he still wins. And I think personally, from a coaching standpoint, that means a lot. That if a guy with arguably, it's easy for me to say, the best form I've ever seen in my life, could take a piece of equipment that other guys would not want to shoot and shoot perfectly with it is extraordinary. I'm pretty sure he's got his belt buckle on, but for those of you who are relatively new to the sport, which is a fair number of us in this room, the 900 on his belt buckle, it is there, right? Yeah, that means he shot a perfect 300 score 3 days in a row at Vegas. It's really an inhuman achievement. So I'd like to welcome Jesse and thank you for doing this. And I think this is a perfect group to start off with. So thank you very much for coming.
All right, so as Henry said, my name is Jesse Starks. Just to give you a brief history, I started shooting when I was around 4 or 5. My dad he owned a bow store in Sturgis, Michigan. And up until that point, we just hunted, and then he started getting into competition archery as well. And this was back in the early 90s, like 92, 93. Looking back on it, he knew a lot of things that people in 10 years from that time didn't know. And they were still learning and figuring it out. And, I took the stuff that I learned from him in my youth, and I just ran with it. So then we lost the store when I was like 8 or so. I still hunted, and in the fall, I'd pick up the bow about August, shoot a few shots, and go hunting. And that was about it. So, and then back in 2008, 2009, something like that, I was living over in Constantine, and there was some place to shoot. They had some winter leagues, and so once it's in your blood to compete, it's there. It's not going anywhere. And so I just continued to go and start shooting more shoots every year in the amateur class. 2017 was my first year that I actually shot in a pro class. So then 2018, I made my first shoot-off. And then 2019 and this year, I made the shoot-off in Vegas. And last year was my first year in Vegas, too. So I was pretty happy with that. So basically what I want to start off today is right now, my target bow is collecting dust in the barn. I actually brought my hunting bow because I'm going hunting next Thursday. So I try to avoid the Orange Army. So usually about November 15th or so, I'll pick up the target bow again and start getting ready for shoots. So what I'm going to do is I break it down into almost 4 phases when I shoot, when I get back to it. The first phase, I'm going to set my bow up. Whether it's pulling that shiny new bow out of the package and or grabbing your old bow that you had for the last 3 years, or get a hold of a buddy and buy his used bow, which, if you know me, that's what I do. So the first thing you're going to do is get the bow set up for you. Now in this, what I call the setup phase, I'm only taking like 2 or 3 days to set up my bow. I'm getting my draw length set so that it's comfortable. I'm getting the peep height set, the knocking point, the rest, tuning it. If you have any questions about that, you just get a hold of Matt. I mean, he's going to set you up and get you going with that. And I'm not going to go in depth on how to set up your bow. There's 1,000 YouTube videos for each thing that you want to do to your bow. So, and like I said, I only spend a couple of days setting up my bow. From there, once it's comfortable, I'm going to move in and I'm going to start working on my form. And this is something that I was taught when I was young, and I actually learned in recent years. They call it selective cycling. So, for example, let's say I know, let's pick a habit. You have a tendency to drop out. After you're shot, you want to, or let's just say that's a tendency that you have. There's a lot of different things that you can work on. But selective cycling, you're taking all your focus and your time and your energy to fixing that one issue. You're not trying to fix dropping your arm, your follow through, your peep height, or you're keeping your head in your peep. You're not trying to fix everything at once. You're trying to fix one thing at a time. Okay, I'm not doing this anymore. Now I'm going to move on. When I'm in my form phase, I will spend like a month there. Because what I'm trying to do is develop muscle memory. Muscle memory is key, very key. You can do something, if you have the muscle memory, you can do something without even thinking about it. I can remember I've worked different jobs over the years. And to this day, if I try to think about how I used to do something, I can't tell you how I did it, but I can do it. My hands know what to do. That's muscle memory. It's very hard for me to tell you how, but I can do it. And so, when you're in your form phase, mirrors, video is a huge one. If you can't find somebody to video you, I built me some cheap tripods out of wood and stick my phone on it. Works for me. So, do some video yourself, watch yourself. Hey, I didn't even know I was doing that. I don't like that. One thing too, that when you're in that form phase, that I really try to avoid caution people at this. Well, Levi Morgan does it this way. Or Stefan Hansen does it this way. That's great for them. Because they can do it the same way every single time. It works for them. Why not do what works for you? So, for example, I torque a bow. I torque a bow hard. I don't know why. I think I know why, but I'm not really sure. I think it's something in my hand, how I'm holding the bow. But it's repeatable. It is so repeatable for me. And I can tune that out of it through moving the rest a little bit or moving it back or whatever. But it's repeatable for me. And when I say that I know I'm torquing a bow, because if I extend my sight bar all the way out, I can only see half of my scope. I'm not joking. My bow sits cocked. I really think I have too much hand this side of the grip, so it pushes the bow around. That's just me. I leave it alone because when I put my hand in my grip, I put that lifeline in a certain spot on it, and it sits the same way every single time. And so, something like that, I can repeat it. Now, if you have a form flaw, you're dropping your hand out of the way, How repeatable is that? So that's why you want to avoid something like that. Or punching the trigger. That's why they try to teach people not to punch the trigger, because it's not very repeatable. Now, if you shoot a back tension and you want to pull, then pull. Pull that thing in half. I don't care. That works for you. I don't pull. I shoot static. That's me. So I really try to advise people to stop to, well, this is how so-and-so does it. That's great. How do you do it? And so in the form phase, I really want you to look at yourself and evaluate how you shoot a bow and make that repeatable, work on any issues that you see during that phase. And I'm saying I spend so much time there because to me, form is more important. Yes, ideally, you want a bow that's set up really well. But I'm here to tell you, I've shot bows out of time. Like, way out of time. And still shoot really good scores with them. So, because I repeated, my muscle memory was the same, my shot process was the same each and every time. So once I've got that all figured out, and once I figured out all my form issues, then I'm going to move in and I'm going to start shooting for score. At this point, I haven't even shot a target yet. I'm still shooting a blank bail. I don't put a target up. Because when I'm working on my form, why does it matter what kind of score I'm shooting? When you go to a tournament, that's not the time to work on your form. So once I get done with the form phase, then I'm going to go into a scoring phase. And that's when I'm going to start shooting for score and start fine-tuning little things. What I mean by fine-tuning things, shot timing. Am I holding too long so then I'm actually getting fatigued and running out of air and ready to pass out because I'm holding the bow for so long? It's just little things like your shot timing, how much is the weight on your stabilizers okay? Do you like this lens power? Is your peep height that's a little too high or just a little too low? You feel yourself doing. That's when I'm going to start micro-tuning some of that stuff. And yes, I may jump back and change that a little bit, but I'm not going to do that very much. Or not very much at all. Because you change one thing, you change everything on a bow. I mean, for example, you move your peep height up, you push your peep just a 1/16 of an inch, you're going to change your point of impact. So that's just one example of many. During my shooting and scoring in here, that's when I'm going to start working on my mental approach. And for me, the mental approach is all about clearing your mind for the shot. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was Fred Bear. Nothing clears a troubled mind like shooting a bow. I know it does for me. So, what I mean by clearing your mind, no thoughts. Like, don't think about what's for lunch. Don't think about anything when you're shooting. You're focusing on the target. You start to work on that. I'll get way more into that in just a minute. We're going to start working on what's your average score? What kind of score are you shooting? I'm a very, very competitive person by nature. And so I am always trying to beat my best score. So whatever face it might be, I'm still, like, let's say we're shooting are you guys familiar with a 300 Vegas round? So in practice, I have never shot a 300 with 30 X's. I've never done it in practice. Done it a couple times in a tournament, but never in practice. I'm always trying to get there. Whenever I'm practicing, I'm trying to get it. So that's what I'm trying to do. You know, whatever your goal may be, you set it for yourself. Okay, I'm going to beat it. Let's beat it. You're building your average up and building that average so you're comfortable shooting that score. Now you can go to tournament. So when you go to a tournament, it's a little bit different of an atmosphere. You start to think about, well, I really want to shoot good, or I want to shoot clean, or I want to shoot this score, or whatever you may. All these thoughts, they create anxiety in your mind. And so you cannot think about score when you go to a tournament. You can't do it. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a tournament. This is the score that I want to shoot. I'm here to say I didn't shoot that score, okay? And we'll just leave it at that. But there have been times when I've gone to a tournament and I've not put expectations on that, and it just blew my mind the score that I shot. And you don't want to put expectations on yourself when you go there. Your goal should be to shoot your average. If you can shoot your average, you're doing what you do every day in practice. So be proud of yourself for that. Build on it next time. Okay, back to what I was just talking about for your mental approach. We've already worked on your form. We've worked on your bow. Okay? The reason I do all of that stuff in the beginning is when I get to a tournament, I don't want to be thinking about, well, are these arrows spined out right? Is my draw too long? Is this going to be too much power in my lens? Am I going to be able to see? I don't want to think about all of that stuff. I want to take care of it a month ago. Because when I get to a tournament, it's me and the target. So I have a system for me. This works for me. You just kind of, it takes some creativity, and you kind of got to play with it a little bit. So I say a word in my head over and over again. And what that does is it shuts it off. It's shutting my brain off. I have actually, I'm not joking, I've had times, it was one time in a state shoot, clean going up, I think I was like 6th or 7th end, something like that. I was sitting there full draw and I was fine. Wonder where we're going for lunch. I'm serious, the thought in my mind was, where are we going for lunch after the shoot? It didn't hit where I wanted it to. So for a long time I used aim. I would say aim, aim, aim. While I'm at full draw, I would just repeat aim, aim, aim. And you'll actually find a time where your brain will get bored with the same word. So sometimes you got to change it up. So it's like, well, I'm saying my word in my head, but I'm still thinking about whatever. So try changing the word up a little bit. Currently, for me, I don't say a word while I'm actually at full draw anymore. While I'm drawing the bow, I say one arrow at a time. And it clears my mind, it shuts it off. Like I said, that's what works for me. My challenge is for you guys to find a word that will clear your mind so that you can just focus on the target. Because that's That's the ultimate goal that you want. Is you want to just stare at the X-ring. You want to stare at that tiny little pocket behind the shoulder. Yes, I use the same exact thing when I'm hunting. Pick a spot on a deer and just stare at it. When you're at full draw, you just stare at it. And I'm not thinking about how big the horns are, or how am I going to get this thing out of here, or anything like that. I'm staring at that spot that I want to shoot. I'm not thinking about my head position or where my feet are. You take care of all of that stuff in the form stage. You don't think about your shot process while you're shooting. Some people will teach that differently, but I believe that you shouldn't think about it because your mind should be clear while you shoot. What I said about muscle memory, that's where that kicks in. If you're not thinking about all of that stuff and you've spent countless hours shooting your bow, you have the muscle memory there. So when your mind goes blank and you're focused on that X-ring, muscle memory takes over. You don't need to tell your body how to do it. It already knows what to do. So that's why I tend to clear your mind out. When your mind is clear, you're not thinking about your expectations. You're not thinking about, oh, I have to hit this X to win, or whatever it may be. I mean, just this last year in Vegas, I've had people, even my wife, okay, she knows me very well. She will ask me when I'm shooting, aren't you nervous? Yeah, I'm nervous. About to crap my pants over here. Well, you don't look like it. Thank you, but that's not how I felt. Like, I get butterflies up in my stomach, and my hands will start sweating. But you're not thinking about that stuff. You're focused on the target. And like this last year at Vegas, I was actually so focused on that 90th arrow. I remember it like it was yesterday. That everything around me started to blur out. And that's all I could see was that 10 ring through my scope. I use a pretty small dot. It's not the smallest you can get. I wish I knew the size. I know which one it is on the sticker thing. The reason I use a fairly small dot is I don't really want that to cover up what I'm aiming at, because I'm looking at where I'm going, not how I'm going to get there. So I'm staring at that X-ring, and I'm letting my dot do whatever it wants to do. Now, the same if you shoot a fiber pin, or, it doesn't really matter. Whatever you're aiming, point of aiming reference. Yeah. So you actually want to look past that and focus where you're going. Focus on what you want to hit. So when you focus on where you want to hit, your mind's going to go blank. And while you're focusing on that, you let your muscle memory take over. One trick that my dad had when I was younger was, do we have those? I will go get them. We used to do, my grandma had a book of them. And they're called, I believe they're called Magic Eyes. And they have, Henry's getting me one right now. There's just like a bunch of blurry colors on there. And, thank you. So, I don't know, have any of you ever done one of these? So, I think Henry said this one is a bird and a scorpion. I didn't look at them. It's actually been years since I've done one. These are very, very hard to see the image while thinking about something else. And so my dad would actually use these as practice to hone it while he wasn't shooting. And we would just stare at these things. Sometimes they take a while. But it teaches you to clear your mind and focus on something. I mean, once you get there, it's like, I don't know, if you ever, they're actually really cool. But when the image pops, it's like, whoa, there it is. It's really cool. But then you start to think about the image and it goes away because you've lost focus. So, yeah, we used to use these for practice. He had a lot of different other things, but I'll pass these around so you guys can look at them. But
So one's a bird, the blue one's a bird, and the brown one is a scorpion. Or so I'm told, because I still can't see them. Yes.
I was actually trying to look at them out there, and then I was thinking about the seminar, and I was just like, no, I'll try it later. But
I'm going to hang them up on the board. Is everybody okay with that, or do we want to pass it around? Stick them up here on the board. I was told that the two red dots at the top, if you make your eyes cross to it, one red dot, you can see the bird. Good luck.
so that was just like one little practice thing that we could do without actually having to shoot a bow, so that it would strengthen your ability to focus. I've actually found sometimes when I go to a tournament, if I listen to music before I shoot, not during, you can get in trouble for that. But like, let's say I'm walking from my car into the shoot, I'll usually put on some music, and it's just getting yourself to that what athletes call the zone, and the zone is just a state of being able to focus. I read a book here a while back, and I can't remember the name of it. Well, because I read it on the plane to Vegas, so that was a while ago. Anything pre-COVID is a blur. I believe it was called One or something like that. So your mind, the human mind only has the capacity to do one thing at a time fully. So, for example, I use driving and texting as an example because we all know texting and driving is dangerous, right? So, I tried to tell my wife, but so when you're driving and you're not texting, your focus is 100% on the road. Okay? When you're trying to text and form out a sentence and think about your response while trying to drive and focus, is when you start swerving or you're missing things. It's because your mind can only do one thing at a time with full capacity. I don't want to get in trouble with women because they say they can multitask better than men, but that's what this book said. So, and I believe it to be true. My point is, why would you think about something else while you're trying to shoot a bow when you want to be able to shoot your bow with 100% capacity? So that was just an interesting tidbit. I honestly didn't know that. So I'm just going to do a quick couple shots here. I'll try to walk you through my process a little bit. It's hard for me to talk and shoot at the same time. This is my hunting bow. I actually took the scope off of my target bow, so it's almost hunting season. So I don't really need to tell myself stance. It's there. I know. A trick, if you take a piece of cardboard, you find what's comfortable for you, and there's a lot of different stance that you can go through. They have like, some people, I swear some people will stand like this. It's more open or closed. I want you to find what's comfortable for you. I like to have my back foot, my toes on my left foot are in line with the balls of my feet on my right. That's what's comfortable for me. Maybe you like to have it this way. But take a piece of cardboard, stand on it, and trace it. Trace out your feet. So whenever you come up, you put your feet in that where you got it traced out. You do that a few times, your feet are going to automatically assume that position. Muscle memory again. So I know my feet are good. I'm going to find my hand position. It's that spot that's comfortable for me. It's very repeatable. It's comfortable. It's where I like to hold the bow the best. Then from here, I'm going to pick a spot on the target, and I'm going to stare at that spot, even through full draw. My eyes never leave that spot. Come into anchor. When I come into anchor, my eyes never leave the spot, even through the whole draw cycle. About the only time is my arrow falls off the rest, but I'm going to start my shot process over. I'm going to let down. I don't try to be one of them tongue lickers or anything like that. So I'm going to let it down and I'm going to restart it because my mind is already, it's had to go back to crap. My arrow fell off the rest. Now I got to put it back on. Now we're good. I feel like it's over. I don't know if that would change if I had a really big buck in front of me, but I don't know. So the reason I'm picking that spot before I ever even draw that bow is I'm starting my mental process then. My point is that once I get to full draw, I'm still in it. I'm still already settled. Everything, again, it's muscle memory. So, feet, hand, anchor. And I'm just picking like a hole, a random hole in the target. That's really all you need to, just find something small. I like to focus on small things. I was taught to shoot it It's a Hoyt, it'll be okay. There we go. The limbs are so wide I can't put my bow pod on. I was taught to shoot a gun by aim small, miss small. And so I take the same thing into archery. I'm going to aim small, so hopefully I miss small. I'll pick something really small on the target to stare at. Yeah. I was going to see if we... No, I'm not going to do a target. No, that's fine. Sometimes it's hard to... When you start out with your first end of practice at a tournament, or your first end when you're shooting for score, your target's all blank. Some people have a hard time focusing on that. Now I shoot like a 6 power lens, so I can usually see the X-ring once I come into full draw. So I'm just gonna focus on just stare at the X-ring. If you can't see the X-ring, still just try to pick something small, a shadow or whatever it is that you can see. The smaller, the better. Because, if you're staring at something this big, is that your goal to hit in a group this big? Or do you want really small? So, the smaller, I feel like the smaller the better when you're focusing on it. Okay, I'm gonna pull my bullets. So then, after the shot, sometimes you can look at it if you want and see, so you can make adjustments if you need it be. But if you make a bad shot, whether you're in the whatever phase you're in and you make a bad shot, move on to the next one. Don't worry about that. You can't get that arrow back. It's already done. Let's learn from it. Which one of you assholes wants to shoot a tank? Because that one didn't. So I try not to let bad shots get to me. I know sometimes it's hard. It's very hard to do. But if you dwell on that bad shot after you make one, now when you go to clear your mind on the next shot, it's there. So you're just going to snowball effect yourself when you do that. Do you guys have any questions? For me or? Yeah.
So you say you shoot 6 power lens.
Yes, for indoors.
So on that shot process of where you're concentrating on the bullseye, are you seeing that X like clear as day, or are you a little fuzzed out on it?
I use a clarifier. I think it's the green one. I'd have to look to be sure. But I use a clarifier, and yeah, it's clear. It's very clear, and I can see the X.
So when you're on the X, and we know everyone's moving and whatnot, even though when it comes off the X,
I don't worry about it.
You don't come off the X?
So if you try to Nah, it's okay. You're all right. So you're focusing on the X-ring in here, and let's say your dot starts to float like this, or I'm just using an example, wherever your dot may want to float, or your pin. If you try to correct that, so let's say it drifts off to the left a little bit, I'm going to move it to the right. No, I'm going to move it back to the left. No, I'm going to move it back to the right. Oh, no. You're creating anxiety. because you're going back and forth. I'm too far to the left, so I'm going to move it to the right. And then, oh, that was too much. So I just let it float. There have been numerous times where it's floating away from it, and the shot will break, but it'll still hit the middle. Because I'm not worried about where that dot is. I'm worried about where my focus is. I'm focusing on that instead. I do know that they make a lens. I think it's Specialty Archery makes a lens that's blurred out, except for like a small ring in the middle that's clear, and that's it. And I know a few pros have shot that before and had a lot of luck with it. I'm actually curious to try one sometime. I don't know. Does that answer what you were? Okay. Sure. Just don't stick my hand. Yeah.
When you're working on form in the early stages and you're blank bailing, how do you know when it's time to move on and be like, I know my muscle memory is good enough to move on to the next stage?
So that's a good question. That is just self-reflection. Do you feel like you're shooting good? Different opinions are always good to know too. Like ask. I know Henry is a coach. You're a coach, correct? He has a couple coaches on staff. You can have or show somebody a video. Well, how does my form look? Or it's how you feel comfortable. Because if you're not comfortable in your shot, how can you move on? Because you're still thinking about the things that you're not comfortable about. I mean, second opinions are always great, especially since it's kind of hard to watch yourself shoot. I mean, does that help you at all?
Something I tell most of my students is one of the benefits I have as a coach is I'm not inside of you. I'm outside looking at you shoot. And the thing about watching Jesse is that nothing moves. Nothing moves on Jesse when he shoots. But the idea of he's comfortable in good form. A lot of us, actually in this room, a lot of us coach and we have people who are comfortable in really bad form. They're comfortable in really bad posture. The thing about Jesse is the key, I think, for his shooting is he's comfortable that his posture is excellent. So it's not just that his feet are in the right place or his shoulders are in the right place, that he's comfortable, he's not forcing himself into something that is uncomfortable to get to good form. Because you've done it. That's the whole idea of shut up and shoot to me was shooting to the point with good form to the point where it becomes muscle memory. I mean, that's where this whole thing came from. Having coached a lot of beginners, I mean, Jesse's kind of the epitome of where we want all of our students to get, is where they're comfortable with muscle memory that is perfect form, or perfect form for them. And that's the other thing is that we live in a world where, at least on the Olympic side of things, there's sort of one way for everybody to shoot. Open stance, MTS system. I don't necessarily think that's one size fits all in archery, and I don't think that's the goal there either, but, I think mentally getting what works for you, good posture is good posture. And one of the reasons why I'm passionate about archery is it's the first thing that's connected my brain and my body in a positive way. Something I want Jesse to address while he's here as well. We do a lot of adaptive archery with people that are not physically perfect. Jesse wears a cochlear implant. He's talked about how, in a weird way, it helps him. I'd like him to talk about that today. But I think it's inspirational for a lot of us. I think one of the reasons, things that works well for me as a coach is that I'm not physically perfect, and a kid sees me shoot actually when I do shoot, that they see that I actually shoot halfway decent. But just because you have a physical disability doesn't mean that you can't do archery. So if you can speak to that and how that'll picture archery, that'd be great as well.
Yeah. So, like Henry said, I wear a hearing aid. I've had a hearing aid since I was like 4 or 5, something like that. And so, my wife says it gives me an advantage, but because I can't hear what's going on around me, I actually broke my hearing aid, and I just didn't go get another one for like 3 years. It's a long story. So I shot without it for so long, and you don't hear the distractions around you. But I tell you what, just because I can't hear the noises outside of my head, I can hear the noises inside of my head. So you still got that. I think they actually get louder. So you have to learn. That's where I started to really learn how to block that stuff out because I couldn't hear the outside distractions. Um, oh, being deaf really hasn't really, to me, hasn't affected me or held me back at all from being able to shoot because it's who I am. I mean, I'm going to learn to shoot it without it or not. I I actually got this one back 2 weeks before Vegas this year. So it changed my anchor point a little bit, but that was it. And I just decided to not shoot with it on while I was in Vegas this year. But when I come back, I relearned to shoot with it myself. Um, yeah, there's people that shoot without an arm. Or there's Matt Sussman in no arms. He shoots a bow. The guy is crazy. I remember the first time I ever seen him shoot. That was wow. So, and I think it's awesome Henry shoots with cerebral palsy. I mean, it's amazing to me. There's people that shoot out of a wheelchair, or they like like a half stool when they sit and shoot. That's why I'm a huge believer that archery is 90% mental and 10% equipment. I mean, it's all up in your head. And if you try to make it more difficult than it is, then it's going to be pretty hard. So yeah, that's why yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
Matt Stutzman, there's the argument that he has an advantage because he's using stronger muscle groups. You know, they always take somebody's disability and flip it around and say, well, now he's got an advantage. I mean, the guy has no arms. I mean, really? But, I mean...
He pushed the bow between his toes.
Yeah.
How can that be an advantage?
Exactly. So, I mean, you know, the fact we do a lot of adaptive archery here, cerebral palsy, stroke victims, people missing limbs. And you're right, if you put your mind to the fact that you want to shoot a bow, it really doesn't matter what you don't have, you can do it. It's really quite amazing. And we do have one hunter this year who lacks the use of his left arm. He's right-eye dominant. So he fitted him with an over-the-shoulder with a mouth release, and he's slamming his How am I doing this? He's slamming his right eye shut using his left eye as his dominant eye to shoot. But he shot a crossbow for a number of years because he was told, you know, you'll never shoot a vertical bow again. And he decided that that was not the case. So, anyway. And I like the fact Jesse's supremely confident. I mean, I've heard him say that he knows when he gets to full draw that his arrow's going to the middle. Most of us don't know that, or mentally know that. But to hear how supportive he is of people that do not shoot as well as he does, and the process with which he got better, and the process by which other people do get better is where this whole seminar came from. I think it's fantastic. And we work with kids every day that do have physical issues, whether it be CP or other things. They're probably not going to Vegas, you know, but the fact that archery can be a really amazing thing in their life, I think, honestly, Jesse's a great ambassador for the sport, and I feel like that's what we try to do here, is be ambassadors to grow the sport. And if we start telling people, well, you'll never be any good at archery, that's not exactly a way to grow the sport. Does anybody else have any other questions? I think nobody really is going to have 2 full hours of prepared remarks. I think what he gave us in an hour plus was amazing. Does anybody, just go around the room, if anybody has any questions personally about, obviously about his form. I'm glad he shot because I don't know, I mean, he makes perfect form look effortless. And I think that's the key.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I've watched him shoot and marveled at him shoot for a number of years. And we were here shooting together one day practicing, and I walked up to the target. Of course, all his are in the center, mine weren't. And I said, Jesse, I said, how come all your arrows are in the center and mine aren't? He said, you're going to have to figure that out.
Actually, I got a question for you. How often do you do a practice? Do you practice, and how long does a practice session usually look like?
So that just depends on the time of year. Like right now, I'll be honest, I haven't shot my bow in 2 weeks. Right now. I've been working a lot. Once January rolls around, I usually try to shoot, my goal anyways, I have 2 kids and a wife, so is to shoot 3 times a week for an hour to 2. I mean, I try. If I can make that goal each week, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I do know I feel more pressure the week of a tournament, and I will try to shoot every day if I can. So I just tell my wife I'll see you next week, and I try to shoot every day the week of a tournament. It just depends the time of year and what I'm going through. For me, a practice session, I just practice how I play. So I'm gonna grab my bow and hang a brand new face up, 2 practice ends, and shoot for score. And I want to shoot whatever it is that I'm going to shoot next for that tournament. So if I'm going to Vegas, I'm going to try to shoot at least a 300 round, if not a full 900, or it's just whatever I can fit in. Obviously, don't try to push yourself so much during practice that when you do get to a tournament, you're tired, or you're burnt out, or you're sore. Try to find that limit. Does that make sense? Before you get there. So, I hope that helps.
One thing I admire about Jesse is he's not a guy that's getting paid $1 million a year to shoot a bow. He probably should be, but he's not. And he's an everyman. He's a guy that's working a job. He's got a wife and kids, so the real life is in the way. I don't mean that in a bad way. But I think that's what makes it so valuable. Is his self-awareness about himself, and that translates to his shooting. And I also admire how he brings in like weird little truths from other aspects of life, like the magic eye pictures. I think that's cool as well. So I think there's a lot that we can take away from this, because unlike some guys that dedicate their entire being as shooting archery, you've got a lot of distractions in your life. So when you do practice, it has to be purposeful practice.
Yeah, very.
Anybody else got any questions?
Are your practice sessions always time-based, or do you focus on, I'm shooting well, I'm shooting well, I'm shooting well, oh, I'm noticing I'm not shooting as well, maybe I should stop, or do you, I'm not shooting as well, I reevaluate and go back to shooting well? Do you like cut your practices short if you can't bring it back to where you want to be?
So, I know what you're talking about. I've had days like that, like a hard day at work or something, and just your muscles are sore or tired, or you're stressed out or something, and I'll start making mistakes. I will usually try to cut it short, just because I don't want to form a new habit, and then now I gotta work. Now I gotta start all over again to try to get rid of that habit. No, I'm not saying just because I made one bad shot on the target, well, I'm done for the day. No, I'm going to keep shooting, but, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bad shots on a target, I know at my level that something's up. I'm just going to walk away for the day. We're going to come back and we're going to try this again. And most of the time, it'll clear it right up. So, and I know I've shot for long enough, I know kind of my limit and how my body is feeling too. Like, I'm always hungry, so if I don't eat before I shoot, I usually get pretty weak, and that doesn't help either. Does that help you? Yes, awesome.
Do you avoid certain foods like before term, like coffee, pop?
So I used to be like, okay, you gotta load up on carbs the night before, and no pop. I cut out caffeine for quite a while. When I was shooting, now I can actually drink a Monster and shoot a bow and be fine. So, I mean, no, I don't really cut out anything anymore. I try to eat healthy in general, but no, I don't really. I do know there's certain things I do know that I can't. Like if I try to take like an ibuprofen, I'll get really shaky, real jittery. I've noticed that before. That's like the only thing I've noticed. I usually always drink a coffee in the morning before I go shoot. But I drink a coffee every morning, so your body's used to it. So it's not like I'm drinking a whole pot of coffee before a shoot. I wouldn't try that. So.
Don't you think that goes back to the self-awareness of you've shot in a lot of different situations? I mean, I find it interesting that you know how you shoot after having had an ibuprofen. I mean, I don't know how I shoot after an ibuprofen. You have shot a lot in your past, so you don't necessarily shoot a ton of practice now, but you do know a different situation, what affects your shooting and what doesn't.
Yeah.
All right.
Have you ever experienced target panic?
So I went through a brief period of target panic. 2019. This would be last year, right after indoor nationals. I went through where I felt like I was trying to jerk the release instead of letting the shot happen. I was very fortunate enough to catch it early, very early on, and I was just committing myself to blank bailing, and I got rid of that. By doing that, I know blank bailing is not always the answer for target panic. It depends on what kind of anxiety you develop or the level of anxiety too. That will depend how long it takes to fix it or what to do to fix it. I mean, there's so many YouTube videos on how to fix it. Every time I hear of somebody having target panic, I feel bad for them. It happens, and I had a brief little spat of it, and I don't want it again. So
Maybe it just comes back to repeating that word in your mind.
yes, that goes back to the word, saying the word over and over again. Target panic, it boils down to be the anxiety on your mind. You don't want to miss. So, well, if you're not thinking about not missing and thinking about your word or clearing your mind, there shouldn't be any anxiety.
So I was interested in what you said earlier about you shoot a static shot versus a dynamic or a pulling through shot. It's sort of like, we teach a lot of beginners, all beginners start off with a static shot. You have your hand here on the jawline. When you release, you just let the hand kind of stay there. It's the idea being that then you graduate. You graduate to a dynamic shot where you have these, hands coming back. It's sort of like 3 fingers under. In some of the USA Archery old materials, it was 3 fingers under is for beginners. And yet, it's really not. A lot of really accomplished traditional shooters shoot 3 fingers under. Can you speak to sort of where you came in on shooting a static shot? Because the world would tell you to pull through the shot. And
Yes.
as an instructor, a dynamic shot does not work for me. Like a guy with a muscle issue, a dynamic shot does not, pulling through a shot does not work for a guy that's built like me. Why does static work for you and why didn't you? Why did you graduate to dynamic shoot?
So I was taught to shoot static. When I was a kid and I first started out, I don't know how I didn't bend the trigger on my caliper release, but I was a really, really bad puncher. So my dad handed me an old Stan Lekowski back tension, and he taught me to shoot static, and so I ran with that. And I find as a static shooter, I am able to hold steadier because you have less movement in the release hand. So I've had to tweak it a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. What's it called? Preload. So when I come back and I come full draw and I'm in here. So how a hinge works, it works like a door hinge, right? Comes comes off your half moon when it rocks, and that's how it releases forward. So when I come back and anchor, I'm pulling with my arm into it, but the release is still rocked forward, okay? I'm setting a preload pressure. I know the feeling of that pressure. I know how much feeling I need to put against it. I came up to that feeling by just playing around with it. This amount of pressure feels good to me. It's very comfortable to hold. That's when I take this off. I wait. I just wait for that release to go. I'm not pulling on it at all, but it's rocking. It's moving. Because I'm actually relaxing my index finger, and when you relax that finger and all the pressure is in the back up here, it's going to create the hinge movement. And then, so I never used to have any follow through. So then I just started, that was a selective cycle that I went through, actually flexing my bicep. When I would anchor, my biceps is flexed when I'm setting the preload. So when the shot breaks, my hand's going to do something when it goes off. So back over the shoulder. I'm not joking, I used to go like this. I see myself on video one time, and I was like, that's got to stop. I don't like that. So that's how I came to being I did try shoot pull, and I shot for a couple months like that, and I didn't like it. It's different. But the guys that do it, they do it very well. And
So the bigger issue for me is how would you coach a student to get comfortable thinking their own thoughts? Like, this works for me, this doesn't, when the whole world is telling me that I should shoot. I mean, because let's face it, pulling through the shot, 99 out of 100 shooters are taught that is the proper way to shoot. And you're my counter argument to that.
yes, that boils down into your form, though. Like, a puller, so pullers are generally going to be a little bit more in the elbow. So you're going to, this, because you got to have room to do it. The bow differs too. If you have a bow with the limb stops, you have nothing to pull against. I mean, you're not going to pull that cam through that limb. It's at least not any American-made bow. Versus if you have like a cable stop, there's some give in the stop. Now, it's really about feel. If you look at what's out there, all these options, try each one. I like this. This feels really good to me. So go with it. I mean, that's how I look at it anyways.
If you don't have any other public questions, Jesse's going to stick around. I know he's going to be here till noon and talk to him individually. Unless there's something else that somebody wants to see for the group. I mean, we'll adjourn the public part of this. If that works. Okay, you have more?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, everybody happy? I'd like to thank Jesse for coming today. This is fantastic. One of the best things I've ever been a part of in archery, so thank you very, very much.